Good morning, my dear students. I hope you all are doing well. So, continuing with the last class of our general English, let's start today's class. Alright, so for today, you take out page number 35. That is, we were doing the story of that blacksmith. Alright, so I think the explanation part of this paragraph is not completed. So, let's go through this paragraph once again and let's try to understand what it says here. Alright, so please take out page number 35, that is second paragraph. Alright, see once again. In 15th century Antwerp, a master blacksmith called Quentin Metsys fell in love with a painter's daughter. Alright, so now before proceeding, let me tell you that Antwerp is basically a name of a city that is there in France. Alright, so at that period of time, what happened is that period of time here, that means 15th century. Alright, so what happened is that there was a blacksmith, alright, master blacksmith, whose name was Quentin Metsys. Alright, so he actually fell in love with a painter's daughter. Now, as you all know, it's a painter's daughter. So what could be, the requirements of a painter? You could very much make an idea out of it. Alright, so what happens, see, the father would not accept a son-in-law in such a profession. Now, as it happens in everyone's life, in every loved one's life, because of many reasons, because of many problems, what happens is that the girl, the parent of the girl doesn't accept a son-in-law who doesn't, have a particular set of requirements. Alright, there are certain requirements that a father-in-law actually wants from his son-in-law. Alright, and those requirements were not there in that blacksmith also, and that's why what happened is that the father of that girl did not accept that boy. Alright, and that too belonging to such kind of profession, that is blacksmith. Now, blacksmith, as you all must be knowing, that blacksmith is a person who is an iron maker. Alright, so Quentin sneaked into the painter's studio and painted a fly. Now, this is a tough job for Quentin. Alright, because now what happens is that he had to impress, he was supposed to impress his father-in-law, would-be father-in-law, if he really wants to marry that girl. Alright, so what did he do? He sneaked into the painter's studio. He went into the painter's studio and he painted a fly on his latest panel with such delicate realism that the master tried to swat it away before he realized what had happened. Alright, now again you will see here, that is the phrase delicate realism. Now, whenever a painter paints, in his panel, alright, whenever a painter paints, a landscape or whatever it is, he paints something on a panel, then what happens that it actually depends on the painter to make that painting appear to be like a real object. Alright, that is actually the quality of the painter, and art has got that quality. Alright, and that is what he tried to do. Who? That is the blacksmith. So he tried to paint that fly. Alright, he painted a fly on his panel and he painted it with such realism, with such delicate realism, that means he made it appear, he made the fly appear like a real object. Alright, so what happened is that the master tried to swat it away. The master, he tried to hit that fly away from that panel, alright, before he realized what had happened. So before his consciousness, before his awareness, he tried to hit that fly away from that panel. And what happened after that? Alright, what had happened? He could not make out. So Quentin was immediately admitted as an apprentice into his studio. Now after that, he actually painted that fly with such delicate realism that, you know what happened, he was immediately afterwards, he was immediately admitted as an apprentice. That is, apprentice means a newly a newly entered learner, you can say. All right, when a person learns something, you know, when he or she is a learner, all right, when he or she is in the process of learning, in the learning process, and that too newly, all right, that person is referred to as an apprentice. So after that, he got admitted to his studio as an apprentice, that is, as a learner. He married his beloved and went on to become one of the most famous painters of his age. So after seeing his painting, that father, you know, father of that girl, became really very impressed, all right, with such delicate realism that he actually painted that fly on his panel. All right, so that's why the father of the girl allowed him to marry the girl, his girl, all right, and he went on to become one of the most famous painters of his age. And then what happened is that he became one of the famous painters of his age, because as he got admitted to his studio and all right, he became, afterwards he became a perfectionist in the field of painting. So these two stories illustrate what each form of art is trying to achieve. All right, that is a perfect illusionistic likeness in Europe, the essence of inner life and spirit in Asia. So this is an example of European painting. All right, so European painting here, which asserts and which signifies illusionistic likeness. You know, you will see illusion in both the paintings, however, all right, but it has got, the art has got the quality whether that illusion, that painting or the painter makes it appear to be like a real one. All right, it has got the quality of the painter has got that quality to make an illusion appear like a real object. So this is what happened, with this story of the European painting. So I think you must have got some kind of idea between these two types of painting. That is the Chinese painting. You can enter from any point of view in terms of Chinese painting. All right, you can enter from any point of any point, and you can exit from any point. All right, you're free to flow from anywhere to anywhere. So that is the essence of Chinese painting. Whereas in European painting, what happens is that you have to see and look at the piece of painting exactly from the eyes of the painter. But in terms of Chinese painting, you can imagine anything and everything. All right, that is the essence of Chinese painting and European painting. All right, next you see, in the Chinese story, the emperor commissions a painting and appreciates its outer appearance. Now, this is the characteristic, one of the features of Chinese painting. All right, a viewer, an observer, the emperor, he can ask the painter to paint any sort of painting, and he appreciates its outer appearance, because as we all know, we are what? We are an observer. All right, so we can appreciate a painting only from its outer appearance. We can't go that deep, into the imagination level of that painter. All right, nevertheless, the painter wants something else that is different. But as an observer, what we do, we appreciate a piece of painting only by its outer appearance. All right, and that is what it says here, that the emperor commissions a painting and he appreciates its outer appearance, but the artist reveals to him the true meaning of his work. But now it becomes the duty of the artist, that is the painter, to make the emperor realize the true essence of that painting. All right, the painter only can make us determine the true meaning of his work, because it was his imagination. Through his imagination, he painted that painting. All right, so we can only appreciate its outer beauty only, the outer appearance only. But from what point of view he had actually drawn that painting, we can't make that out. Alright, so that is what it says. The emperor may rule over the territory he has conquered, but only the artist knows the way within. Very important line. You will get a textual question based on this line too. Alright, so what it says here, emperor, a ruler, he has the power to rule over his territory, alright, over his region or over his kingdom that he has conquered. No doubt, we all know that. Alright, but only the artist knows the way within. But only the artist can make us feel, can make us realize the true meaning of life, the true meaning of an art. So ruling a kingdom, if you think, ruling a kingdom is also a kind of art. Alright, but the essence of that rule, the essence of being a true ruler, the essence of looking at a piece of thing, that essence can only be felt by an artist. Now, I am not saying here that the emperor, whether the emperor is an artist or not, I am not saying here. I am just telling you the basic fact of life, that there is a difference between art and artist. Alright, art is, you can say anything can be art. Music is an art, singing is an art, alright, painting is an art, nature is an art, alright, cooking is also an art. You can say anything to be as art, but only artist can feel the true essence of that art. Alright, that is what it says here. So, the emperor may rule over the territory he has conquered, but only the artist knows the way within. Artist only knows the true essence of any art. Alright, that is what it means. Let me show the way. The Tao, a word that means both the path or the method and the mysterious works of the universe. The painting is gone, but the artist has reached his goal beyond any material appearance. Now, you will find this expression, that is to go beyond any material appearance. That is the essence of Chinese painting. That is, what did I say? You can enter a particular piece of painting from any point, and you can exit also from any point. That means what? You can actually go beyond any material appearance also, if it is based on imagination. Because imagination is what? Imagination, when we say about imagination, one can imagine anything and everything which is out of our reach. It could be, out of our reach also. We can imagine a thing which could be out of our reach also. Alright, so that is the basic essence of Chinese painting, which doesn't actually happen in the realistic world, but you can imagine anything and everything. Alright, so that is what Chinese painting is all about. Alright, next you see, a classical Chinese landscape is not meant to reproduce an actual view. Again, see, the same meaning it says, it refers to. Chinese classical landscape is not meant to reproduce an actual view. It doesn't reproduce a realistic view. It does not represent an actual view, as would a Western figurative painting, as we can see, we can feel from a Western figurative painting. Alright, so as we discussed also earlier also about figurative painting, that is when we see a particular piece of painting from the eyes of the creator. Alright, that is called figurative painting. So whereas the European painter wants you to borrow his eyes and look at a particular landscape exactly as he saw it from a specific angle, the Chinese painter does not choose a single viewpoint. Again, very important, and it describes one of the features of Chinese and European painting. In terms of Chinese painting, what happens is that the painter doesn't want the observer to have to hold only a single point of view. You can have a multiple point of view, alright, as is in the case of literature. So in terms of literature also, you can have multiple point of view. one thing is there, you can look at it from multiple point of view. All right, that is exactly what it appears with the Chinese painting. But in terms of European painting, what it happens is it has got a specific angle. All right, that specific angle is made by the painter, that is made by the creator, and he wants the observer, the viewers, to look at the painting from his angle through which he created that painting. All right, so this is one of the features of both Chinese and European painting. Next, see, his landscape is not a real one, and you can enter it from any point. That is Chinese painting. Then you travel in it, you explore it, all right, you imagine whatever you want. The artist creates a path for your eyes to travel up and down and then back again in a very leisurely movement. So you can have anything, you can experience anything in a Chinese painting. This is even more true in the case of the horizontal scroll, in which the action of slowly opening one section of the painting, then rolling it up to move on to the other, adds a dimension of time which is unknown in any other form of painting. Now it says again about the Chinese painting. You can actually enjoy a Chinese painting like a roller coaster. All right, you can go wherever you want, you can imagine whatever you want, you can come out, you can exit, from whatever point you like to. All right, so just remember, it's like a roller coaster. Then it also requires the active participation of the viewer, who decides at what pace he will travel through the painting, a participation which is physical as well as mental. Now it requires definitely participation of the viewer, participation of the observer, all right, and that participation should be both physical as well as mental. The Chinese painter does not want you to borrow his eyes. Very important. Chinese painter wants you to borrow his imagination, but European painter wants you to borrow his eye. All right, that is the difference. So he wants you to enter his mind, because imagination occurs in the mind only. We imagination only from the mind. All right, so that is what it refers to. So the landscape is an inner one, a spiritual and conceptual space. So in case of Chinese painting, landscape is an inner one. Inner, that means imagination. Imagination happens in the inside of our mind. That is in the mind, all right, that is inside of our head. All right, so that is what it says, that it is an inner one, imagination one, which is a spiritual, very spiritualistic type of thing, that is imaginative, and conceptual space. It has got a concept where you can enter from any point and you can come out from any angle also. All right, so that is it for this much, for this page. I hope it's all clear to you. If you still have any doubt, please, you can ask me. All right, and for the later part, only one page is left, that we will continue in our next class. All right, so for today, let's wind up. All of you, please take care, have a great day ahead, and thank you very much.